video, I wanted to do a book review on a recent book that I read, and it has been on my mind ever since I read it. It's a real life story, it's a real life woman, it's a real life scandal, and it was the first time that I ever heard of it. So the book is The Trials of Mrs. Rhinelander by Denny S. Bryce. And when I tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. And you guys know I love historical fiction. It's one of my favorite genres. And while I was reading this book, and even before, I went on this like research rabbit hole just to see, everything that happened. And y'all, this case, it just got me. So again, when I saw that there was a historical fiction book, I picked it up, I read it, and my goodness. So before we get started, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, y'all. Okay, you guys. So with this case, the reason why I became aware of this case is because of this book, Harlem Rhapsody by Victoria Christopher Murray. You guys know this is the story about Jessie Raymond Fawcett, the woman of the Harlem Renaissance. But there was a section with her talking to the author, Nella Larson, who wrote Passing. And she had all these newspapers on her desk. And Jessie asked her, what's going on here? Are you starting like a newspaper, company? And she was like, no, there's this case that I have been fascinated and I have been following, and I think I want to write about it. And the headlines state, Blue Blood weds colored girl, Rhinelander and bride vanishes, Rhinelanders flee publicity, bride of Rhinelander once called mulatto, Blue Blood charged bride with deceit over race, Rhinelander bride seeks plot, Rhinelander sues bride, seeks annulment, Rhinelander's case going to trial. So when I read that, I said, I wonder, is that real? Another thing that got me, you guys, is that Nella Larson, that Passing by Nella Larson was inspired about the Rhinelander case. He actually does mention the case in the book. When they're talking about Claire's situation, y'all know Claire, her little thing that she did. She was saying, I wonder if her husband will, divorce her, be just like that Rhinelander's case. So again, this is by Denny S. Bryce. She is known for historical fiction writing. I have one book by her that I have not read, but after reading this, I want to read her works because this was just so good. Now, let's get into the people, y'all. So, you have Alice Jones. She works as a domestic. She comes from a working class family. Her mother was a housewife, and her father, he owned taxi cabs and had his own taxi business. So, one day she's working at a school / inpatient clinic. And it's a clinic that is in Connecticut, and a lot of people of wealth and status, they send their children there if, they have some qualities that can kind of hinder them in the long run. So she goes there and she meets a young man named Leonard Kip Rhinelander, but everybody calls him Kip. And they start talking, and when you get into the nitty-gritty of him, you realize that Lenny, that's what she calls him, Lenny is at the clinic because he is there for, oh Lord, don't laugh, he's there for extreme shyness, and he has a very bad stutter. But they start talking and they like each other. She treats him like a human being, and I think because of his condition, it looked like people just didn't really fool with him. But she learns that he is of wealth. He has a lot of money. The Rhinelanders, they were on the level back in the 1920s. They were like next to Rockefeller. They have money like that. Her main attraction is not that, it is Lenny. And so they start talking, really get involved with each other, and they decide to get married. So they get married in 1924. About 2 weeks in their marriage, news headline says that Rhinelander has married a colored girl and she has not told him about it. And this is so crazy because the one drop rule plays heavy in this story. So Alice was raised as white. Her mother was British, came from England. Her father, he had mixed race people in his family, but he wasn't directly, black. It was like his great, granddad had some Caribbean descent. He had like some Jamaican in him. Now, her father was like, had a little of a darker hue. You wouldn't say, oh, that's a black man. You wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? Some like white people that got like kind of tan skin. It's like that, okay? But when they, excavated that information, they were like, oh no, she black. Then there's a situation with what her sister did, which I don't want to, give it away, even though this is public, even though this is a real life case, still, it's some things, if you do want to read this book, I want y'all to find out for yourself, But there's a situation that her sister does, and that's, brought to light. So, again, like 2 weeks into their marriage, it's ruined because of, that. He knows about like her family situation. So it's not a shock to him. But Lenny's mind is extremely delicate, and his dad knows that, and I believe that Alice knew that. And he comes back one day, and he comes back one day to the house like bawling on the floor like a little boy, right? And she's like, what's wrong? He says, my dad says I have to, if I continue to marry you, continue to be with you, he's going to cut out my inheritance, and I can't be poor. I just cannot be poor. I mean, he's like wailing, right? And he says, my dad says I need to get an annulment. And at first what they were thinking was, they knew that his dad was not going to be down with her because of her being a domestic. That at first he didn't even know about, the racial aspect. It was because, of that situation, her status. And he was like, well, once I turn this age, I'll get my inheritance. And it was such a hefty inheritance where he didn't have to work anymore. That's how much it was. And so that's why they kind of wait to get married. But then the daddy like, yeah, no, you're not getting nothing. And so he says, we can get annulled. We can get an annulment. And then, once I get my money, then we can get remarried and move out of, New York. That was their plan, right? So she going along with it. But because of the headlines and everything like that, they dragged it along, and it was so much scandal, And the crazy thing was, interracial marriage was legal in New York at that time. It just was rare. And I think the way that they had spun it, like she was deceitful, she lied about, being black. And when you look at the pictures of her, she don't look black. You would never think, if you walking down the street, you would never think that was a black woman, which she's not black. But they're like, you black. Your great granddaddy had some Caribbean heritage in him. You black. That's basically what it was. And so they go to trial, and oh my gosh, you guys, the stuff that went on in that trial, y'all. They had one scene, and it was real, where they made her take off her shirt because they wanted to examine and see that, oh, she has a black woman's body, so he should have known that. And the way that they said that, she was black because of, her breast and the curve of her thighs and her bottom. Then they got Lenny on that stand, y'all. Ooh. And, Lenny got a stutter. And again, his mind is very delicate, so he didn't know which way to turn. Then they had some letters that they wrote out, some personal letters, and they start talking about their sex life and all that. You can imagine, you're just gutted. You feel like you are naked on a stand. Everything that they, exposed for this couple. This was a horrible situation. And to know that was actually true, that went on in that court case, y'all. So with this book, it's two different, time frames. So you're getting Alice's perspective in the 1920s, and then Alice has a niece that is a reporter that's during the 1940s. And because of the scandal, they are estranged. Because of the scandal that went on years ago, they don't talk. And Alice has 3 sisters. Then the niece that is a reporter, she knew Alice. They were very, very close. She used to play with her and everything. But the reporter, says, I didn't know that your aunt was Alice, Rhinelander. We need to get a story. And her niece is like, I haven't seen her in years. And also, like, is that case even relevant? That happened how many years ago? He like, yeah, you need to get this going. So that's how we meet the niece and how we meet Alice and that's how we meet Alice and when she tells her story. But Alice has not talked to reporters. She's not doing any of that. Towards the end, which is not a spoiler, she did get a hefty settlement for that time, but there is some payments that the daughter of the Rhinelander, which is Lenny's sister, she does not want to continue to give her monthly allowance, basically, and so she goes back to court, and she got to go through that basically again. But I love the fact too that this book, not only does it talk about Alice's life, we do meet a reporter named Marvel Cunningham, but the real life woman, her name is Marvel Cook. I'll put a picture up. She was a reporter, and Alice feels like she's like the only person that she can trust when it comes to reporters, because every time she talks to a reporter, they spin her, story around, and it just goes wrong. And it was so much fun just looking up, the people and the information. But I love the fact that you do get two different, point of views, because you do want to know what happened, like the aftermath, and also with her family, because like I said, this was a huge scandal. I mean, this was so big where they had paparazzi, following them. They had reporters. They couldn't go at their house. It was that big. The sad thing about it is Lenny, he ended up passing in the early 1930s at the age of 32. He went back home with his, family, and Alice never got married again. Alice lived into the 1980s, I think 1989. She moved back home with her, parents, and after her parents died, she took over their house and their land and everything. But I think Alice probably couldn't marry again, because if she did, all that was gonna go away, her settlement, all of that, because you're getting remarried to another person. So I think that was one reason why, that she did not get married. What you think about that? So sad, because she just, that was it. And the fact that marriage didn't last no time. Okay, it was like 2 weeks until they got married. Already a whole, situation. And again, Lenny was so delicate, and he didn't know how to play the game. He honestly didn't. Now, what kind of makes me kind of question Alice a little bit, y'all, is, when they got married, they end up paying reporters off. So like they wouldn't put their marriage announcement in the papers. Now, was that because she knew that his father wasn't going to approve because of the economic status, or did she know that was going to be a big deal about the racial aspect, even though directly her father is not black, but still, she know during those times how that was. I wonder, you know what I mean, with that. Also, she knew that, I'm speculating, did she know that his mind was so, again, delicate? I mean, you were there at that clinic for extreme shyness, and then, you got to stutter, but again, you were there for extreme shyness, and then when you talk to Lenny, he's very gentle, soft. So it was kind of like, and then when she learned that he has money, I wonder, was it her opportunity? You know what? I'm going to get this boy, and I'm going to get the life that I want to get. She was working class. She always, the jobs that her family did were working for white families. So I kind of wonder, was that, you know what I mean? Again, I'm just speculating, but some of the little things that I did research and come out, I was kind of like, did Alice know what she was doing? But when they did ask her, the only thing she quoted about her marriage, when they asked her about her marriage, she said it was a beautiful love affair. And that was it. But this case was just so fascinating to me, because I had never heard of it. And you know what? A lot of people don't talk about this case. A lot of people don't know about this case. And I think there's a method to that madness. You know what I mean? But the fact, too, I think that also gets me is Nella was inspired by this story, by this case, by this woman. You read Passing. That's a fantastic book. I would urge you guys to read it if you haven't. She said that she wanted to explore, the pros and cons, the ins and outs of passing, and how it can sometimes be devastating, and then sometimes it can work out, but that person's always on, edge. And if you have, read passing, you know, Claire, she realizes she wants her people back, but she has given that all up because Claire hated the fact that they couldn't, you know, do anything, they couldn't go anywhere, and she hated the fact that they didn't have money, they were poor. That was kind of the thing that I kind of picked up a tiny bit from Alice. She didn't, I mean, they weren't poor like that, but the fact that she always had to work for someone else, and the work that she did was domestic, you cleaning up after people and all of that. She wanted something different, and she got that with Lenny more ways than one. But if you guys are looking for, first of all, a historical fiction book, if you guys are into historical fiction, I would say pick this up. Secondly, if you're looking for a story that will really grip you, a great plot, a twist, character development, you need to pick up this book. And I think this also is perfect for Women's History Month. You know, March is Women's History Month, and you're learning about a real life figure, you know, in history that got erased. The author said this is like the first historical fiction book about this case, about this woman. And the good thing about this book is she said she really wants to focus on Alice, because when you do read some of the court documents and they have some, you know, like some critical analysis and things of that nature, they're mainly is focusing on the court case, and they're focusing on the Rhinelanders. You don't get Alice's perspective. You don't get Alice's family perspective. And you got all of that. So again, if you are into historical fiction, if you want to learn something new, but if you also still want a love story, you get that. You get a little bit of happy, you know, moments, a little bit cute moment, but you're also, you know, learning while being entertained. It's not a long book. I would say pick this up. And again, this is my first time reading this author, and it will not be my last. I really want to get into more of her works. She is exclusively a historical fiction, you know, writer. So if that is one of your favorite genres, I would say, you know, pick her up. Even though I've only read one of her books, I am going to continue to read her catalog, because y'all, this is just really good. This was published last year too. That's the beauty about historical fiction, that you can be entertained, but you also can learn something, and it's not hitting you over the head, you know, kind of like a textbook. No, it's not hitting you over the head with it. You still are learning. And the fact that it came from like multiple books, it started off with this book. I went back to this book, finally got to the meat of, you know, the story because of this book. Again, that just shows you how great historical fiction, you know, writing is, that you can learn while being, you know, entertained. Pick up this book, you guys. It really is a good book. So that's all I have for you guys, and I'll be back with more Black books.